Good afternoon. Welcome back. Well, it's a different day here as I'm in my home garage, and I figured I'd give you guys a little bit of an update on the Vespa. Since I've done a lot of work to it, I haven't recorded much, unfortunately. It's kind of hard to make a video at home. There's a lot going on here. There's people in and out of the garage, so it's really hard to make a good and consistent video that makes sense. It's something I'm going to have to figure out in the future. And I know I've missed a lot on this bike, so I'm going to kind of bring you guys up to speed on what I've got done with it, the problems and the hurdles that I've faced, getting this bike to the stage that it's at right now, and kind of give you some insight on, the next steps. So I figured I'd update you real quick. We'll get you to the bike and we'll walk through the process of where I'm at, how I got there, and the pitfalls that I've run into. We'll start at the back of the motorcycle and we'll work our way forward. I do have the plate mounted finally. As you can see, it's sitting back on its wheels. I did decide to have a brand new set of rims powder coated to that safety yellow. I do like that color. It's something I think makes this bike look really cool in my opinion. When it comes to the left side cover, there were some dents and dings. You can kind of see there's a little bit of a dent right here, and I had to work those out. This door was caved in pretty good and didn't open real well. It still doesn't open and close the best, but it's a little better. One of the cool things that I have is this little oil canister in here, and this is for measuring out your oil. My brother has 3D printed me this little holder. It's got 3 magnets on it, so it's magnetic. We're trying it out. We're going to see if this actually works real well, but it sits in there, and then obviously my little oil cup fits right down inside and then just hangs out inside there. Now I know that you can get the little spring and whatnot and hang it from there, but I like that look and it keeps this kind of open for whatever else I want to put into this side. I also have purchased the trim, which I know looks dirty, and I did that on purpose to match the look of the bike. One of the other things that I have is I'm going to get one of these oil cans, these vintage looking oil cans. My brother got me this for Christmas. This holds the can, so I am going to get a can for this. I'm not sure which one just yet. I ordered this mirror from SIP, and unfortunately all of the chrome on this thing was bubbled and peeling when I got it. Brand new mirror, and it looked like garbage. So I've decided to take and peel off all of the chrome and then give it this good and vintage look. I'm going to rough up the rest of this so it matches the rest of the look here on the bike. Not really happy with SIP. This was a pain in the butt because it looked terrible, and the throttle tube, which we'll get to in a minute, was a pain in the butt and gave me a bunch of headaches as well. Now when it comes to the front of the bike, obviously as you can see, the leg shield still has its bends in it. I'm going to leave those. I'm not going to bend those back. They're just going to stay the way that they are. I had thought about trying to bend those back and get these looking nicer, but in doing so and messing with it at all, you can see that the old original paint is coming off, and I don't want that. I do have a new horn, but I don't love it, so I'm going to take my old horn and I'm going to fix it. I like the look of the old horn better, so I'm going to actually pop the rivets off of that, separate the two halves because mine was crushed, and I'm going to try to pound that horn back out and make it work, because it should work. When it comes to the front fender, you can see there's a bit of a dent here still, but if you remember this thing, it was not straight at all. And looking at the bike, the fender was really cocked off to the right because it looked like it had crashed pretty hard on the left too and dented this side in and pushed everything kind of over. But now, as you can see, it's quite a bit better. I know it's not perfect. I could have put 100 more hours into it to make it look better than what it did or what it does now, but in my opinion, it looks good and I'm very happy with it. Now when it comes to the other side of the bike, obviously there's cables and there's wiring and there's all that good stuff, and I'm still working on those things. I do have almost all of my cables ran. I did buy all my cable ends, and I'll have to go ahead and cut things down to make them fit for brakes and for the throttle and for the choke and everything to make that work properly. Now when it comes to the throttle tube, my original throttle tube was bent. In looking at the bike, you can tell it's been crashed on both sides. It must have hit really hard on the left side to smash the fender the way that it was, and then maybe crossed over and then hit the right side and bent the throttle tube. What that did is it prevented the throttle from turning at all inside of the housing. So I ordered what was supposed to be the proper throttle tube for this bike. This is a 1958, it's a VNA model, and I ordered it right from SIP using their parts finder. Unfortunately, what I got was a tube that was, I think, 1.5 millimeters smaller than this. This tube actually is threaded right about here, so it hooks to the steering head, and that new tube was not threaded inside there, so it didn't work at all. Unfortunately, because SIP is not in America, it was a pain in the butt to communicate with them and then get a refund. Unfortunately, I ultimately ended up buying a boot, this little boot right here, and paying $40 to ship that boot because all they would refund me for was the purchase of the throttle tube and the mirror that, the tube didn't work at all. I can't use it all. The mirror I'm going to have to alter and make it work. So unfortunately, I'm not super happy with them or their customer service, but what can you do? Now coming back to the engine, a couple of things that I've run into. I have a new old stock carburetor or freshly rebuilt or whatever. I do have it covered with a bag so no dirt and debris gets in there. What a pain in the butt. So my original carburetor I have, and I messed up. The needle in the top here, I bent. And in doing so, I found that you cannot find anybody that carries the needles for these things. They are unobtainable, period. Like no one has them, no one can help you. There's a number on the needle, no one makes it. I've searched high and low, I've talked to a ton of people, and unfortunately, there are no options for replacement needles for that. So it was off to buying a carburetor. Well, in October, I ordered a carburetor from Italy. That carburetor made it all the way to Michigan, where I am, and it literally went to every major city around me. And in doing so, it passed over my city a handful of times and then ultimately ended up being lost. So unfortunately, I never received that carburetor. Now, I couldn't get a refund on that carburetor till almost December. eBay in its finest. They could see that the carburetor was lost, but for whatever reason, the post office kept flagging it in transit to the next position or in transit to the next destination. That's what it was. So it appeared that the carburetor was moving. Well, unfortunately, there's no proof to what that next destination was, and it said that for weeks. Well, eBay said, well, it's still moving, you're going to get it. I never did. I had a fight with eBay to get my refund. So I ordered the next carburetor, this one that I have right here. I ordered this like the 1st or 2nd of December. I talked to the seller. Him and I communicated back and forth. He actually looked for a carburetor needle because he rebuilds old carburetors, and he happened to have this one. It was a happenstance kind of thing. He doesn't do Vespas. He didn't have a lot of Vespa parts, but he does rebuild carburetors, and that one was part of the collection that he had. He guaranteed me that he would get this thing to me. I'd have it in a couple days. The shipping was astronomically expensive, and he said, I do it this way because it's guaranteed to get to you. Well, almost a month later, and that carburetor did the same thing. It didn't leave, actually. It went to the post office in Italy and sat there for a month and didn't do anything else. Well, when my time came up to where I could turn it into eBay, I reached out to the seller and I said, hey, I need a refund on this. I can see that this thing, hit the post office and then disappeared. I'm assuming this one is lost too. He was astonished. He could not believe that this carburetor was missing. So he went down to the post office and he said, I'll make something happen. And sure enough, guy's a stud. He's a winner in my book. I made a new friend out of this deal, which I'm very, very grateful for. But he went to the post office. He talked to whoever, and the carburetor ended up leaving from that station and got to America in a day or two, and then was to my door in less than a week. So it just took that little bit of communication to get the carburetor to move to me. Super grateful for it because it is a complete carb. This thing is ready to run. This is actually everything I needed to get this engine running. That's the only thing I needed to get the engine running. Obviously, I need to hook everything up, but I needed that carb because it had the proper needle in it, which I do not have on my other one because that one's broke. Okay, some of the other issues that I have, and I'm sure other people are going to run into when it comes to these. On the 58 models, when you order the new cable kit, the choke cable they provide you is not right. It's not the right one. No one has the right one as far as I can see. I've talked to a few different places. I pretty much only order from Scooter Mercado just because they are cheap. They're very efficient. I don't want to say cheap. They're less costly than anybody else. Their customer service is unmatched. They are a great group, and I've been very, very grateful for everything they've done for me. I've ordered from Scooter West too. They're pretty good. I've noticed that when you email them, they don't get back with you right away. So, I know people are busy. I get that, and I'm trying not to be an impatient guy too, because, I don't like when people are impatient with me as well. And that's not what the deal is here. I just, when you're trying to do something, you'd like to get an answer. And sometimes with Scooter West, you just don't get an answer. And I don't know why. And that's okay. I'm not upset with them. Sometimes you shoot out an email and they don't respond because they can't. And that's all right. Anyway, so whatever cable kit you get, this one will not be right. Also, on the VNA models, when you are ordering parts, when you order a new wiring harness, one of the things you'll run into is finding a harness that has the wiring for the rear brake. Now, these things, I guess they made them where they didn't have brake lights, like where the light actually changed when the brake was pressed. So there is no brake switch for the front brakes. I mean, there's nothing there. It's just a mechanical, very basic brake, and it doesn't do anything to tell you on the back that you're braking. So if you pull the front brake, this light does not illuminate. I did not know that. Also, when you order wiring, it does not come with a brake wire. This is something that you have to figure out yourself. Now, I found a couple of good wiring diagrams. Actually, my brother found a couple of good wiring diagrams, and we figured out how to make this work. But if you order a replacement wiring harness, there will be no provision in there for a brake light. It is made just to run a rear tail light, a front headlight, and that's it. There's nothing else. So you will have to figure out how to wire up your brake switch to make it work. So we're just going to, hook into the system here, run a wire up, and then run a wire back, so that way when the brake is pressed, it'll break that connection, and then that second light will illuminate. Because there is 2 lights in the new unit that I have. My old unit might have had 2 lights. I don't know. It was in pretty rough shape. Unfortunately, one section was broken off, and I don't have that handy here, so I can't show you that, unfortunately. Here's that horn. You can see it's all bashed in here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these rivets out and then pound this back out so it can actually function again. My brake light switch, my original one, is broken. One of the brass tabs, or I think they're brass, I guess I don't know what the heck they are, broke off inside here, so it doesn't actually work. So I was able to get a new one. I did get that from Scooter West. Another neat little thing, my brother actually 3D printed me this keychain here. It's to match my wheels and some of what I'm doing on this bike. So I really love that. Another thing that I run into with this bike, the lock, and I might have gone over this before, I did not get keys for this. And unfortunately, this thing sat wherever, and the springs inside here for the lock pins deteriorated. They were rusty, and some of them were stuck and some of them were gone. So there was no way for the locksmith to actually make me a key. So they had to make this work. So I have a lock now that works. I do have the stock grip for the other side, so I'll put that on here. I'm just going to run the stock ones because they're dirty and gross, and I do love them. I believe I have almost everything I need to finish this project. The one thing I am waiting on now is I need the gasket for the rear taillight. So once I get that, then it's going to be kind of hammering down and getting this thing ready to go, because I'm in the final stages. I've got parts and pieces laying all over the place for this bike, and I'm ready to hear it run, and I'm ready to ride it and do all the fun things. Well, friends, like I said, I just wanted to update you guys on the Vespa. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out. I know I've talked to a couple different people on different things with this bike. If there's anything you need help with, I've had this bike obviously completely stripped down to a bare frame and engine out. I did not take the engine apart because the engine does run really well, so I don't see a need to do that. I know I need to do an oil change on it. Obviously, the oil's been sitting in that thing for a long time, so that needs to happen as well. Other than that, it's just buttoning this thing up. But anyway, if there's questions that you have, no expert, not an expert by any means, but I have torn this thing apart recently, and I did see, kind of a lot of the things going on with it, and I know some of the ins and outs when it comes to ordering parts. So if there's something I can help you with or some advice I can give you, please let me know. I will put Scooter Ricardo's website down in the link below, so that way if you are looking for parts, you can use their parts finder to find parts for your vintage Vespa. Hopefully, it helps you get yours back on the road. Well, friends, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like. If you enjoy my content, follow me. Hit that subscribe button. I appreciate the subscriptions. If there's, questions or comments that you have, please drop them in the comment section below. We'll check you next time.